We live in a world where attention has become a currency and everyone is trying to spend yours. Opinions arrive uninvited. Judgments speak loudly. Comparisons creep in quietly. From a young age, we are taught to look outward for approval. Will I be accepted? Am I enough? Yet few are taught a deeper truth. The more you live by the voices of others, the further you drift from your own soul. Ignoring others does not mean becoming cold, arrogant, or disconnected. It means learning when not to let external noise interfere with your inner truth. It is an act of psychological strength, and for those who master it, life changes profoundly. Today, we explore 5 key truths about the power of ignoring others and how it can free you, strengthen you, and help you become who you truly are. When someone criticizes you, it hits fast. It hits your chest before it hits your mind. Your heart speeds up, your shoulders tighten, and suddenly you're replaying their words like they are facts carved in stone. And if you're not careful, you start questioning yourself. You start shrinking. You start wondering if maybe they're right. But listen to me closely. Most of the time, that criticism has very little to do with you. It feels personal, but psychologically, it usually isn't. What you're hearing is not truth. What you're hearing is projection. People walk around carrying invisible bags filled with fear, insecurity, regret, and unfulfilled dreams. And when those bags get too heavy, they look for someone else to put them on. That someone is often the person who is trying, growing, changing, or daring to be more. You ever notice how the loudest critics are rarely the ones doing the work? The person who mocks ambition often never chased their own. The person who laughs at discipline usually quit when things got hard. The person who shames confidence often feels powerless when they're alone with their thoughts. They see you moving, and it reminds them of where they're stuck. This is how the human mind protects itself. Instead of facing inner pain, it redirects it outward. Psychology has shown again and again that people who judge others harshly tend to score higher in anxiety, dissatisfaction, and low self-worth. In plain language, people who are hurting inside tend to hurt others on the outside. So when someone throws negativity at you, understand this: they are not diagnosing your flaws, they are exposing their wounds. Think about a crab bucket. You don't even need a lid. When one crab starts climbing out, the others grab it and pull it back down. Not because they're evil, not because they hate that crab, but because its escape threatens the normal of the group. Its progress is uncomfortable. It forces a silent question. If it can get out, why am I still here? And instead of answering that question honestly, they pull it back down. That's how people operate. When you try to rise, when you try to break patterns, when you try to become more disciplined, more focused, more intentional, you disrupt the comfort of those who chose not to. I've seen this play out in real life too many times. A student decides to take school seriously, suddenly they're called fake or acting different. A young person starts waking up early, working out, reading, grinding, and the same people who wasted years suddenly say, "You're doing too much." Someone decides to start a business, and the first voices they hear aren't encouragement, they're doubt. What if you fail? Be realistic. People like us don't do that. And those voices usually come from people who never even tried. But here's the truth: they don't tell you your growth exposes their excuses. Your discipline challenges their laziness. Your courage highlights their fear. And instead of dealing with that discomfort, they label you, criticize you, and try to slow you down. That's projection. That's not truth. If you internalize every opinion, you'll end up living a life designed by people who were too afraid to design their own. You'll start making decisions based on comfort instead of calling. You'll stay quiet when you should speak. You'll stay small when you were built to expand. And the tragedy isn't that people judged you. The tragedy is that you believed them. You have to learn this lesson early and learn it deep. Not every voice deserves a seat in your mind. Not every opinion deserves your emotional energy. Ignoring certain people is not arrogance. It's survival. It's self-respect. It's wisdom. Because every time you argue with someone who is projecting, you're trying to win a battle that was never about facts in the first place. You're trying to convince pain to become peace. And that never works. There was a time when I thought I had to explain myself to everyone. If someone misunderstood me, I felt the need to clarify. If someone doubted me, I felt the need to prove. And all it did was drain me. I was tired, not because I was working too hard, but because I was carrying opinions that didn't belong to me. Once I learned to let people think what they want, something shifted. My focus sharpened. My energy came back. My confidence stopped depending on applause. Here's something powerful to remember. People project most when you're doing something they're afraid to do. When you're chasing purpose. When you're breaking cycles. When you're no longer controlled by fear or approval. That's when the comments get louder. That's when the jokes turn into jabs. That's when support turns into silence. And if you don't understand projection, you'll take that personally. But when you do understand it, you'll realize you're not being attacked, you're being tested. And tests are not meant to stop you. They're meant to reveal you. Every great transformation comes with resistance. Every level up comes with noise. The higher you climb, the more voices try to pull you back to where they're comfortable. But you can't let people who refuse to grow become the judges of your potential. You can't let someone else's fear rewrite your future. You can't let someone who quit early convince you to stop trying. There's a difference between constructive feedback and destructive projection. Feedback comes with care, clarity, and intention to help you grow. Projection comes with emotion, bitterness, and a need to feel superior. Learn to tell the difference. Learn to listen selectively. Learn to protect your mind like your life depends on it, because it does. And when you ignore those voices, you're not ignoring reality. You're choosing it. You're choosing to live unburdened. You're choosing to walk lighter. You're choosing to move forward without dragging the weight of someone else's unresolved pain behind you. That's strength. That's maturity. That's power. So the next time someone tries to define you, pause. Ask yourself, is this truth or is this their truth? And if it doesn't align with your values, your effort, your vision, let it go. Let them talk. Let them judge. Let them misunderstand. You don't need permission to become who you're meant to be. Keep climbing. Even if they pull, keep believing. Even if they doubt, keep going. Even if they laugh. Because one day they'll still be talking and you'll be living. Every single time you react to judgment, gossip, or comparison, something invisible but powerful is happening. You're leaking energy. You don't see it dripping on the floor, but you feel it later. You feel it when you're tired for no clear reason. You feel it when your motivation disappears. You feel it when you sit alone and wonder why you don't have the drive you used to have. That's not laziness. That's exhaustion caused by giving your energy to things that never deserved it in the first place. Mental energy is not unlimited. You don't wake up with an endless supply. You wake up with a certain amount, and how you spend it determines who you become. If you spend your energy reacting, explaining, defending, proving, comparing, and replaying conversations in your head, don't be surprised when there's nothing left for creation, discipline, focus, or growth. You cannot build a future if all your energy is being wasted managing other people's opinions. Most people don't realize how much power they hand away emotionally. One comment ruins the whole day. One rumor changes their mood. One comparison steals their confidence, and suddenly they're not present anymore. They're not locked in. They're distracted, irritated, and drained. That's the cost of reacting to everything. That's the tax you pay for giving everyone access to your mind. There's real science behind this. Psychological research has shown that chronic social stress, especially stress caused by judgment and comparison, significantly reduces focus, creativity, and emotional control. That means the more you worry about what people think, the harder it becomes to think clearly, create freely, and stay emotionally strong. You're not weak, you're overloaded. Your system is running too many unnecessary programs in the background. Think about how much energy it takes to explain yourself to people who already decided not to understand you. Think about how much strength it drains to defend your choices to people who don't share your vision. Think about how tired you feel after trying to prove your worth to people who benefit from doubting you. That exhaustion is not accidental. It's the result of misdirected energy. The truth is, growth requires silence. Focus requires isolation. Mastery requires obsession. And you cannot achieve any of that if you're constantly tuned into outside noise. Every great builder, every innovator, every artist, every thinker had to learn this lesson the hard way. Almost all of them were misunderstood before they were celebrated. Almost all of them were doubted before they were respected. Almost all of them were criticized before they were copied. Imagine if they had listened to every voice. Imagine if they stopped every time someone laughed. Imagine if they quit every time someone said, "That's not realistic." Their work would never exist. Their ideas would have died in the planning stage. Their potential would have stayed locked inside them forever. Ignoring others is not avoidance, it's conservation. It's understanding that your energy is your most valuable resource. You can make more money, you can learn new skills, you can rebuild almost anything, but once your energy is gone, everything else starts to fall apart. Protecting it is not selfish. It's necessary. You don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't need to respond to every comment. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. Some battles are distractions disguised as responsibilities. And every time you engage, you lose a piece of yourself that you'll never get back in the same form. There's a reason why focused people seem calm. It's not because life is easier for them. It's because they're selective. They've learned that peace is a byproduct of discipline. They don't let random opinions hijack their emotional state. They don't let gossip dictate their self-worth. They don't let comparison steal their joy. They move with intention, not reaction. Look at how drained people become when they live for validation. Always checking, always waiting, always hoping someone approves. That kind of living is exhausting. You're outsourcing your self-worth to people who are just as confused as you are. And the moment the applause stops, so does your confidence. That's not strength, that's dependence. Real power comes when you stop explaining your vision to people who don't have the capacity to see it. When you stop defending your path to people who never walked it. When you stop seeking approval from people who are uncomfortable with growth. That's when your energy comes back. That's when your focus sharpens. That's when your inner fire starts burning again. Your inner fire is fragile in the early stages. Dreams are delicate before they become strong. Vision needs protection before it becomes unshakable. If you expose it to every opinion, every doubt, every joke, it will flicker. Not because it wasn't real, but because it wasn't guarded. Think about a flame in strong wind. You don't blame the flame for going out. You protect it. You shield it. You cup your hands around it until it grows strong enough to withstand the storm. Your purpose is the same way. Your energy is the same way. You don't announce it to everyone. You don't debate it with doubters. You don't seek permission to believe in it. You protect it until it becomes undeniable. There will always be people who misunderstand your silence. They'll call you distant. They'll call you arrogant. They'll say you changed. But what actually changed is this: you stopped wasting energy on things that don't move you forward. You stopped reacting. You started directing. When you ignore the noise, something powerful happens internally. Your thoughts become clearer. Your goals become sharper. Your emotions become steadier. You stop living in reaction mode and start living in intention mode. You're no longer controlled by what happens around you. You're driven by what's happening within you. This doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you choose when to feel. It doesn't mean you don't listen. It means you choose who deserves to be heard. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care deeply, but about the right things. Energy spent on gossip gives you nothing in return. Energy spent on comparison steals your uniqueness. Energy spent on defending yourself delays your destiny. But energy spent on growth compounds. Energy spent on discipline multiplies. Energy spent on purpose changes everything. You were not designed to carry the emotional weight of everyone's opinions. You were designed to build, to evolve, to rise. And that requires you to be ruthless with your focus. Not angry, not bitter, just intentional. So the next time someone throws judgment your way, don't react, observe. The next time gossip reaches you, don't absorb it, let it pass. The next time comparison tries to creep in, remind yourself that your journey is not up for debate. Every moment you don't react is a moment you reclaim your power. Protect your inner fire. Guard your mental energy. Move in silence when needed. Focus like your future depends on it, because it does. At some point in your life, if you are serious about becoming more than you are right now, you will have to walk alone. Not forever, but long enough to hear yourself think. Long enough to feel your own heartbeat. Long enough to separate who you truly are from who the world told you to be. Every individual who matures psychologically reaches this moment. And when it comes, it doesn't feel powerful at first. It feels uncomfortable. It feels lonely. It feels confusing, because suddenly the crowd you once fit into no longer fits you. You start noticing it in small ways. The conversations don't hit the same. The jokes don't inspire you. The habits everyone else is comfortable with start to drain you. You're not better than them. You're just different now. And that difference creates distance. That distance creates silence. And in that silence, fear starts talking. Guilt starts whispering. You hear voices saying, "Why can't you just be normal? Why are you changing? Why are you making life harder than it needs to be?" This is where most people turn back, not because the path is wrong, but because the discomfort is unfamiliar. Human beings are wired to belong. We want acceptance. We want approval. We want to feel like we're part of something. So when growth starts pulling us away from the crowd, it feels like danger. It feels like loss. It feels like betrayal, especially when the people questioning you are family, friends, or those who watched you grow up. But here's the truth nobody prepares you for. Inner growth has always demanded distance. Always. You cannot become something new while clinging to everything old. You cannot hear your own calling while standing in the middle of a noisy crowd. Growth requires space. It requires separation. It requires moments where you are misunderstood, doubted, and even criticized, not because you're wrong, but because you're no longer predictable. Think about transformation in nature. A caterpillar doesn't ask the group for permission before becoming a butterfly. It doesn't take a vote. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't wait for approval. It isolates. It goes quiet. It enters a phase where from the outside it looks like nothing is happening, but inside everything is changing. If that caterpillar needed validation before transforming, it would stay crawling forever. And a lot of people do exactly that. They stay crawling because they're afraid of what others will say if they try to fly. When you decide to grow, the world around you reacts, not always with support, often with resistance, especially if your path is unconventional, especially if your dreams don't fit the script that was handed to you. You decide to start a business, and suddenly people say, be realistic. You decide not to follow the traditional route, and they say, play it safe. You decide to aim higher than anyone around you ever has, and you hear, people like us don't do that. That phrase right there has killed more dreams than failure ever could. People like us don't do that. It sounds harmless, but it's loaded with limitation. It's fear disguised as wisdom. It's comfort pretending to be logic. And if you accept it, you inherit every ceiling the previous generation never broke through. History doesn't remember those who stayed comfortable. Progress has never come from obedience to collective comfort. Every breakthrough, every movement, every innovation came from someone who was willing to be different before it was celebrated. Someone who stood alone long enough to build something the crowd couldn't yet understand. But let's be honest, walking alone messes with your head. There are nights when you question yourself, mornings when motivation feels thin, moments when you wish you could just go back to how things were. That's normal. That doesn't mean you're failing. That means you're in the middle of growth. Psychological independence doesn't feel like freedom at first. It feels like pressure, because now there's no one to hide behind, no group to blend into, no crowd to copy. It's just you and your choices. And that's terrifying for people who never learned to trust themselves. This is where you learn who you are without the noise, without constant feedback, without validation. You start making decisions based on alignment instead of approval. You start choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term comfort. And that shift creates a gap between you and the crowd. They might not understand why you don't come around as much, why you say no more often, why your priorities changed. They might call you distant. They might say you're acting different. And they're right, you are different. You're growing. Separation doesn't mean disrespect. It doesn't mean you stop loving people. It means you stop letting their limitations define your potential. It means you honor your path even when it costs you familiarity. And yes, it costs something. Growth always does. It costs comfort. It costs approval. It costs being liked by everyone. But what it gives you in return is far greater: clarity, strength, self-trust. The crowd is loud, but it's not always right. The crowd is safe, but it's not always fulfilling. The crowd will cheer when you stay the same and question you when you try to evolve. That's not because you're wrong. It's because your growth disrupts their sense of normal. When you leave the crowd, it forces them to confront why they stayed. That's why ignoring others during this phase is not rebellion. It's not arrogance. It's psychological independence. It's the moment you stop outsourcing your identity and start owning it. It's the moment you realize that fitting in was never the goal, becoming was. You don't need everyone to understand your journey. You just need to understand it yourself. You don't need applause in the beginning. You need discipline. You need focus. You need courage. The kind of courage that shows up when no one is clapping. The kind of courage that keeps going when the only confirmation you have is an inner knowing that you're on the right path. Walking alone doesn't mean you'll always be alone. It means you're willing to be alone long enough to become who you're meant to be. Eventually, your path will attract the right people. Eventually, your growth will inspire instead of confuse. Eventually, what felt lonely will feel purposeful. But that only happens if you don't turn back when it gets uncomfortable. If you're in that season right now, where you feel out of place, misunderstood, or disconnected, don't panic. Don't rush back to the crowd just to feel accepted. This phase is not punishment. It's preparation. You're shedding an old identity. You're building a new one. And that process requires space. Stay the course. Trust the separation. Honor the distance. Because on the other side of walking alone is a version of you that no longer needs permission to exist. The moment you stop chasing approval, the room changes. The energy shifts. Conversations feel different. People look at you differently. Not because you became worse, but because you became real. And authenticity has a strange effect on people who have spent their entire lives hiding behind masks. It makes them uncomfortable. Not because you did something wrong, but because your self-trust reflects something they quietly gave up on long ago. Most people are not living as themselves. They are performing. Performing for acceptance. Performing for survival. Performing to fit into expectations that were never designed for their soul. They learned early that being real was risky, so they learned to blend in, to stay quiet, to stay small, to stay safe. And when someone walks into the room unapologetically grounded in who they are, it disrupts that unspoken agreement to pretend. That's why when you stop explaining yourself, people start questioning you. When you stop seeking validation, people start doubting you. When you stop bending to fit in, people start labeling you. Calm becomes cold. Confidence becomes arrogant. Silence becomes attitude. Not because those labels are true, but because authenticity doesn't need permission, and that makes insecure people nervous. There is something powerful about a person who doesn't argue their worth. Someone who doesn't over-explain their choices. Someone who doesn't get loud to feel important. That kind of presence unsettles people who rely on noise, approval, and constant reassurance to feel valuable. Because deep down, they know they're not being honest with themselves. And your authenticity reminds them of that gap. You have to understand this. When someone reacts strongly to your calm, it's rarely about your behavior. It's about their internal conflict. Your peace exposes their chaos. Your self-trust highlights their self-doubt. Your alignment reveals their compromise. And instead of facing that truth, they attack the mirror you. This is why confident silence is often misunderstood. The world is used to loud insecurity, loud opinions, loud defensiveness, loud explanations. When someone chooses silence, people don't know where to place them. They can't read you. They can't control you. They can't predict you. And what they can't control, they try to discredit. People who don't explain themselves threaten systems built on approval. People who don't seek validation disrupt environments built on comparison. People who stand in their truth without needing applause challenge cultures built on performance. And that challenge makes people uncomfortable. Think about it. If everyone around you is chasing approval and you stop running, you look like a problem. Not because you are one, but because you're no longer participating in the same game. You're no longer competing for attention. You're no longer adjusting your identity to be accepted. You're just being. And being is powerful. Authenticity is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't argue with opinions. It doesn't convince doubters. It simply exists. An existence without apology is intimidating to those who have spent years apologizing for who they are or hiding who they really are. That's why people who are authentic often find themselves misunderstood, not because they're unclear, but because others are uncomfortable with clarity. When you know who you are, you move differently. You don't rush to prove. You don't panic when misunderstood. You don't chase validation from every direction. And that level of self-possession feels threatening to people who are still negotiating their worth. Some will try to pull you into arguments. They want a reaction. They want you to explain. They want you to lower yourself into the same emotional chaos they live in. Because if they can get you to react, they can feel better about themselves. If they can provoke you, they can avoid dealing with their own insecurities. But authenticity doesn't react. It observes, it listens, it stays grounded, and that restraint often gets misinterpreted as arrogance. But arrogance is loud. Authenticity is quiet. Arrogance needs validation. Authenticity already has it. When you trust yourself, you don't need to convince others. When you know your values, you don't need to argue. When you're aligned, you don't need permission. And that independence can make people uncomfortable, especially those who live by external approval. Understand this clearly. People who are disturbed by your authenticity are not revealing your flaw. They are revealing their fear. Fear of being seen. Fear of being honest. Fear of standing alone. Fear of confronting the parts of themselves they bury to survive. And that fear has nothing to do with you. Your job is not to make others comfortable by dimming your light. Your job is not to explain your peace to those addicted to chaos. Your job is not to shrink so others don't feel insecure. Your job is to live in alignment with who you are, fully, quietly, and unapologetically. There will be moments when you feel pressure to explain yourself. Moments when silence feels misunderstood. Moments when you're tempted to perform just to be accepted again. Resist that urge. Because the moment you trade authenticity for approval, you lose yourself, and that cost is always higher than the discomfort of being misunderstood. Not everyone is meant to understand you. Not everyone is meant to like you. Not everyone is meant to walk with you. And that's okay. Authenticity doesn't require consensus. It requires courage. As you grow into who you truly are, some people will drift away. Some will question you. Some will talk. Let them. Their reaction is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to stay grounded, to stay honest, to stay true. Because the right people, the ones who are also ready to live without masks, will recognize you without explanation. And when you stop trying to be understood by everyone, something powerful happens. You become understood by yourself. You stop arguing with the world and start listening inward. You stop performing and start living. And that alignment gives you a presence that no opinion can shake. So if your authenticity makes some people uncomfortable, don't apologize. That discomfort is the sound of truth knocking. Whether they answer it or not is their choice. Yours is to keep living honestly. Beneath all the noise of the world, beneath the opinions flying at you every day, beneath the labels people put on you, and the comparisons that creep into your mind when you least expect it, there is a quiet voice inside you. It has always been there. It was there before the world told you who you should be. It was there before fear got loud. It was there before expectations piled up on your shoulders. That voice knows you. Not the version you perform for others, but the real you. The one that feels tired when something isn't right. The one that feels alive when something aligns. The one that knows when you're forcing a life that doesn't belong to you. That voice knows what drains you, even when you pretend you're fine. It knows what excites you, even when you downplay it because it doesn't sound practical. It knows what feels meaningful even when nobody around you values it. And it knows what feels false even when everyone else is applauding. The problem is not that the voice isn't speaking. The problem is that it speaks softly and your life is loud. From the moment you wake up, the world starts talking. Do this. Be that. Act like this. Don't act like that. Success looks like this. Failure looks like that. And if you don't look, move, or live a certain way, you start feeling behind. So you turn the volume up on external voices and slowly turn the volume down on yourself. You start checking in with everyone else before you check in with your own soul. And over time, you forget what your inner voice even sounds like. If your life is filled with external opinions, you will never hear that voice clearly. You can't hear whispers in a storm. You can't hear truth when comparison is shouting. You can't hear purpose when approval is your priority. And that's how people get lost. Not all at once, but slowly. One decision at a time, one compromise at a time, one I'll do what they expect at a time. This is how regret is born. Not from failure, but from betrayal of self. Many people reach old age with a deep, heavy regret, not because they failed, but because they succeeded at living someone else's life. They did what was safe, what was expected, what was approved. And one day they wake up and realize they were never truly present in their own journey. They were spectators in a life they were supposed to lead. Ignoring others is not selfish. It is an act of deep responsibility to your own existence. You were not put here to be a copy. You were not built to live on autopilot. You were not designed to constantly look left and right for permission to be yourself. Ignoring others in the right way is how you protect your ability to hear what only you can hear. Your inner voice doesn't scream because it doesn't need to. It doesn't compete with the world. It waits patiently. It waits for moments of silence. It waits for you to slow down. It waits for you to stop explaining yourself to people who aren't listening anyway. And when you finally create space, it speaks clearly. That voice is the reason some paths feel heavy even when they look good on paper. It's the reason some opportunities feel wrong even when everyone says you're lucky. It's the reason you feel restless when you're living out of alignment. And it's the reason you feel calm, focused, and energized when you're moving in the right direction, even if the road is hard. But here's the hard truth. You can't hear that voice if you're addicted to approval. If every decision runs through the filter of, what will they think? You're not listening inwardly, you're outsourcing your life. And when you outsource your life, you lose your sense of direction. You become busy but not fulfilled, successful but not satisfied, surrounded but still alone. Listening inwardly requires courage, because sometimes that voice will tell you to walk away from what's familiar. Sometimes it will tell you to disappoint people you love. Sometimes it will tell you to start over when everyone thinks you should settle. And that's scary. But ignoring that voice is even scarier because it leads to a life that looks full but feels empty. When you start ignoring the noise of others, something powerful happens. Your intuition sharpens. Your decisions become cleaner. You stop overthinking every move. You stop second-guessing yourself into paralysis. You start moving with intention instead of reaction. And that's when alignment begins. Alignment doesn't mean life gets easy. It means life gets honest. You still work hard. You still face obstacles. You still get tired. But there's a difference between being tired from purpose and being tired from pretending. One drains you. The other fulfills you. When you listen inwardly, you begin to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, the opinions of others lose their grip. Not because people stop talking, but because their words no longer override your inner knowing. Criticism doesn't derail you. Praise doesn't control you. You become anchored, grounded, centered. This is where real confidence comes from. Not from being right all the time, but from being aligned. Not from external validation, but from internal clarity. When you know why you're doing what you're doing, you don't need everyone to understand. When you're connected to purpose, noise becomes background sound. A lot of people are exhausted because they're trying to live two lives at once. The life they feel called to live and the life others expect them to live. That tension will wear you out. The only way to resolve it is to choose. And choosing yourself doesn't mean abandoning others. It means you stop abandoning you. Your inner voice is your compass. It won't give you a full map, but it will always point you in the right direction. It will tell you when to stay, when to leave, when to push, when to rest. But only if you listen. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is access. It's in quiet moments that clarity shows up. It's in stillness that truth surfaces. That's why ignoring others, even temporarily, is so important. You need space to hear, space to reflect, space to feel what's real instead of what's popular. You don't need to announce this process. You don't need to explain it. You just need to honor it. Because at the end of the day, you're the one who has to live with your choices. You're the one who has to wake up with them. You're the one who has to carry them. When you listen inwardly, you align with purpose. And when purpose guides you, the opinions of others lose their power. They become information, not instruction. Noise, not direction. And that freedom from constant comparison, constant validation, constant doubt is priceless. So quiet the world when you can. Step back, breathe, listen. That soft voice inside you isn't weak. It's wise. And if you let it lead, it will take you exactly where you're meant to go. The power of ignoring others is not about rejection. It is about selection. You choose. Which voices deserve access to your mind? Which opinions deserve space in your heart? Which judgments deserve your attention? Not everyone earns that privilege. When you stop living for approval, you begin living with meaning. When you silence the crowd, you discover yourself. And in that discovery, you gain something rare in this world, inner freedom.